Hey Rush Creek, Hope here. I am excited to share with you today a little bit about the history of the rule of life and why it's relevant and even important to us today in our own personal context of our walk of faith. But before we get into that, I'm curious if you're anything like me, then you will know that it's easy to sometimes get caught up in the busyness of life and the chaos of our schedules, and before you know it, the days turn into weeks, turn into months and years, and it all kind of starts to be a blur, right? And sometimes we even forget what day it is. And anyways, just the busyness of life can sometimes get to us. And before we know it, we might be asking ourselves, what am I doing with my life? How am I intentionally living in a way that is honoring to the Lord and that is helping me progress in the great calling to which I've been called, right? To live a life worthy of the gospel. And I'm reminded of the psalmist in Psalm 90, verse 12, when he is talking to the Lord and he says, "Teach me to number my days, that I may gain a heart of wisdom." I've always just been so perplexed by that particular verse and how even way back then in biblical times and in the Old Testament, they too found it easy to let the days start to run together, right? And maybe struggled to live in a way that was intentional, right? And found this need to be asking God to help us number our days, help us make every day count, every hour, every minute count, so that we're living in such a way that allows us to be intentional with our faith and make sure that we're living in a way that allows us to be accomplishing this great mission that we've been given by Christ, right? So the history of the rule of life, it started in early monastics when they kind of recognized this same need to make sure they weren't getting swept away in the chaos of the world and different things that might be prying for their attention. And so they set out to create this rule of life, right? And in today's context, when we think of a rule, we might think about a law or a list of do's, a list of don'ts. But in this sense, a rule was more so understood as a way to measure, right? Kind of like we have the word ruler today, a measuring stick, a way to have a guide that we make sure, we're living in such a way to accomplish the mission that we've been given. So in monastics, this rule of life was a set of guidelines that allowed them to see, am I living intentionally so that I am walking in such a way that will allow me to live a life that's honoring to the Lord ultimately, and live a life that will accomplish the goal that I have been given through God's word. So in today's context, right, we can easily see how that is relevant to us, and in a time when we have so many things prying for our attention and live in such a fast-paced culture that just seems to never stop, it's easy for us to find our days running together too. But we know that as forerunners of the faith, right, we've been called to live a life of intentionality. And we've been given this great mission, first by Christ and the Great Commission, right, to go therefore and make disciples of all nations. And at Rush Creek, as partners, we've developed this to an even more specific level for our church context, right? We are forerunners of the faith, united to help people find and follow Jesus. So how does that actually happen? How do we make sure that our days don't just run together and then before we know it, we unfortunately wasted the life and the precious days that God has granted us? Well, let me tell you how it won't happen, right? So it's not going to happen on accident. We don't live this life of walking in the Lord and growing in our relationship with Him, growing in our understanding of who He is and who He's called us to be. It's not going to happen on accident. We don't just wake up one day and say, oh, here I am. I'm a fit follower of the Lord, right? I like to think about Olympic athletes. They go through years and years and sometimes lifetimes of training to end up in the Olympics competing and winning gold medals. It never happens on accident. So the same is true of us. If we want to be fit forerunners of the faith, united to help people find and follow Jesus, it's not going to happen on accident. We have to be intentional. We have to choose every single day, how am I going to live today? Am I going to take up my cross and deny myself and follow Jesus? Or am I just going to stumble through the day and live in reaction to whatever happens to me? So I just want to challenge you today to take this on with me as I think about how I can be a fit follower, a fit forerunner of the faith as I strive to live a life of intentionality. What guidelines do I need to set about to make sure that my days don't run together and I can know that I am numbering my days and the Lord is growing in me a heart of wisdom that will honor and glorify Him.